In today's episode, we're going to show you absolutely everything that you need to know about e-commerce and dropshipping finance. This is a thing that so many people make mistakes with. We're going to cover how to use a template. I'm going to give you the template completely free to track your daily profit and adjust your marketing budgets. People are often asking me, how much should I spend on Facebook? This is going to give you the answer. Then we're going to show you a free app that's super simple. It automatically pulls all of those numbers and allows you to adjust quickly. And then finally, we're going to cover just general things about finance and team members, because now you're making profit, you need to start paying taxes. Now, one thing that's quite unique about e-commerce and dropshipping, which is kind of different to a lot of other businesses, is our ability to change marketing spend on a daily basis based on the results that we're getting. This is the beauty of it. We can put $1 in and we can see if we get $1.50 back and we're not making money, in which case we might leave our budget there or reduce our budget, or we're getting $10 back for that $1 and we want to spend a little bit more because the gross amount of money that we get at the end of the day is going to be higher if we spend more. It's this marketing machine. So a lot of other businesses won't need to track daily profit. They kind of have a set marketing budget for the month and then they spend to that. Whereas we want to be variable. We want to spend as much as we kind of can profitably. We need to track daily profit because there is a good risk that if you aren't tracking daily profit, you're going to spend way too much and you're going to get, let's say you do $1 million in sales and you're so excited, you did your first $1 million day, but there was no profit in it because you spent it all on marketing. The incremental customer was not profitable for the amount that you spent. We've got a simple formula for net profit. We've got net profit equals the revenue for the day minus the cost of goods, which is anything to do with getting your product to the customer, minus the marketing spend, which I'm talking about is variable. And then we've got minus other expenses, which might be subscriptions, or it might be you're paying a consultant as well. So I'm going to walk you through this spreadsheet that you can see on screen for our example store, which is Peak Textile. For those that have been following along the series, they'll know what this is about. And I'm going to walk you through each of these columns and how we can actually use Shopify to pull this metric out. You can see as we come across, we've got our profit and our profit percentage. This spreadsheet I actually purchased through a guy I just met off Twitter, but I really liked it. He just sent it across to me and it looks super, super simple. So Shopify is like 70% there, especially if you set it up right. We need to make sure that we set up Shopify correctly so we can just pull the data across from here. To do that, what you want to do is you want to come into this, and you might need to change this tab by just duplicating this tab, changing the dates. Shouldn't be too hard. You can just change that, drag it down, and should be all good. If you ever get stuck with Excel, ChatGPT is incredible at it. So just screenshot what's happening and saying, oh, how do I change this formula? Then what we want to do is, let's say this was all empty, right? So I could pretty much come into this report here, which is like analytics, and then you click on reports, and there should be something called sales over time. It's just easiest to grab it over time and it will give you all of these columns down here. You can always just go into analytics, and because you'll be populating this on a daily basis, but realistically you can save this report, which is super, super easy. And the main thing that we want to do is we want to come down to these columns here and we want to add two things. We want to add gross profit. We also want to add units as well. So we've got these units per transaction now. We can see December 1, we've got the total orders, and then we've also got the gross profit. The one thing that we also want to add is we just want to add cost as well. And we can now start populating all of this. So I'm going to come in here and grab this 11 and put it there, which I already have, orders 1. So the next thing we need to do is we need to grab this revenue number. Now you're going to see a few revenue numbers that we could be grabbing here from. Gross sales is, I definitely wouldn't be taking from there because I've got discounts that are getting deducted through our bundles. Then we've got returns. I haven't had any returns when selling something that's kind of branded and solid. Then we've got net sales, which is basically the deduction of that. Now, this might be an okay number to grab for some people, but you can see I'm also charging shipping. For people that aren't spending enough money, I've got a shipping threshold. So the number that I actually want to be grabbing is this total sales number here, which you can see that it's added back the shipping. Now, with duties and taxes, this is where it can get a little bit confusing and it's a little bit difficult because there's multiple different types of demographics watching this video for me. But right now we are under the sales tax threshold in all of these countries because it's a brand new store. I think I've done like $10,000 in sales, less even. And realistically, until you hit a certain tax threshold in the country that you're selling in, and you can just use ChatGPT to do that. We covered that in previous courses. You don't actually need to be charging sales tax. When you do start charging sales tax, you need to make sure that you're excluding them from all of these calculations because that money is not yours. It's just going to pass straight through. It does, however, affect the consumer's decision because it does make the product look more expensive. I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. But if you do have a store that's doing over the tax threshold in a certain country, go onto ChatGPT and say, what is the sales tax threshold where I need to start collecting sales tax for the UK, US, Australia, whatever, all of them. And then eventually you're going to have to turn that on if you get to that point. And you can put in your sales and say, is this close enough? You can actually go into analytics, reports, and export for each country the total sales that you've got if you need to. But if you're a beginner, which this video is generally for, you're not going to need to worry about that. So I can grab this total sales number here, which is 242, and paste that in there. Now, what's this column here? Revenue after PV. This is revenue after payment processes. Now you can see that this is automatically populated. I probably should have color graded them so that you know which ones you don't need to fill out. But it's just timesing it by 0.96, which means that it's reducing the total amount by 4%. Because it's timesing it by 96%. So this means that generally, on average, if you're just using Shopify payments, maybe you're using PayPal and maybe you're using Afterpay or ClearPay or something like that, on average, payment processing ends up at about 4%. So we just kind of average that out and that money is never coming to you. Then we got ad spend. Now, this is very easy to find. Go into Business Manager, go into Facebook, or let's say you're running TikTok as well, and you need to populate every single dollar that you're spending on those platforms. Okay. So this gets you what we refer to as your MER, your marketing efficiency ratio. Remember the first formula that we talked about, which is net profit equals revenue minus your marketing efficiency ratio, which is going to be this ad spend minus this COGS, which you can see here on this screen. And we're just kind of minusing all of this stuff so we can get to the profits, like revenue minus ad spend minus COGS minus all other expenses, which I mentioned, equals profit. Okay, I hope you're following along. Now you're probably wondering, do you put your agency costs or like maybe employee costs that are running the ads in this ad spend? No, you're just copying and pasting the spend from the platform to get this ad spend. This is what we refer to as the MER. Because this is highly, highly variable. So we've got COGS now. Now this is where I see a lot of people make mistakes, and I'm going to cover it for our store here using Zendrop and a dropshipping tool. And then I'll just cover it just generally for e-commerce as well. This COGS line, we want to basically have every single cost for getting our product to the customer in one metric, right? So if you were doing e-commerce as a whole, you would want this to include the cost of the product, the freight of the container to get it to the 3PL, the 3PL cost, the courier cost to get it to the customer. You basically want it every single cost, and the courier cost is going to just be an average of how much it costed to ship to the customer. And you want to calculate that, and then you want to make sure you put it into the Shopify cost per item. So to add all of these costs to Shopify, we come into here and we click on select the product, and we can click bulk edit. And then we've got all of these things here. We've got our price, but we go to columns and we go to cost per item, select it, and input the cost per item for all of your products and make sure this stays up to date. You really want to do this early, because what's going to allow you to do then is come across to this spreadsheet here in the actual reports, analytics, and we can scroll down. We can get things like our gross profit and even the cost, which includes all of that. So you can see here on this product, our average cost is around $6. Just chuck that in. And then we know that we have 11 units sold. So realistically, that should be 66, but I think I've changed that slightly. You can see that this is $55 here. So when I come over here and I go to COGS, we can easily pull, and again, remember I had to put the cost into here. I can just grab this number, 55, and paste it here. Now you're probably wondering, how do I calculate this COGS number? And it can be quite complicated because you have different couriers, you have different countries and that kind of stuff. This is where a tool like Zendrop can be really helpful. You can just come into this order section. Now they've assured me that this is going to get very, very clear on calculating the cost per these items, and they're changing this design. But we can also export these orders. If you're on Zendrop Select, they'll send you a spreadsheet, which makes it very, very easy. You can export these orders, chuck them into ChatGPT, average them out, or you can just, go through them, and you should be able to get a pretty good average that shouldn't fluctuate too much. The only time that it will really fluctuate is for our brand. We realized that the UK was working really well, and suddenly, we changed all of our ads to be more formatted towards that, and UK started to become a significant part of the business. So once that something fundamentally changes within the business like that, and you should probably be doing this on a weekly basis, changing the cost per item based on what you have. And I've also used virtual assistants to do this on a regular basis. Yeah, just be aware that when something fundamentally shifts in the business, that cost per item might also shift, and you need to go back into Shopify and change it. But there is another method as well that I'm going to show you now. So let's say you just in Zendrop and you're like, okay, what were my cost per orders for today? Or you could even get a VA to do it, and they export all of this and they go, okay, my average cost per sock is $5. And let's say you have multiple products. I've added this other tab on this template. So let's say we've sold the product B as these socks. I'll just fix this a little bit, and we sold 10 units. We can calculate the amount of daily costs that we had for that product because we sold 65 of this other one that cost $9.50, and we can get the total cost here, and we could plug that into this section here. Alternatively, we could just get the VA to calculate it and tell us exactly how much a cost per item is. We've got such simple stores right now. For the most part, single product. So it shouldn't be too difficult to go, okay, this is kind of my average, check it over, and input from the Shopify metric as I kind of showed. I hope that made sense. If that didn't, just hit me up on Discord and I'll clarify it a little bit better. Now I've left refunds in here, but because I've taken from the actual total sales here, which includes returns here, we're not actually going to need that. So I've just left it in there. We can actually delete that column if we need to. And then we've got operating costs. Now, operating costs, what we've done here is you can come across here, and let's say we've got John, who's a media buyer, and it costs $3,000. Let's say you've got a marketing email agency, which is $1,500. Let's say you've got rent as well. I don't know. We can really chuck whatever we want into here. Let's say you've got a little studio, and we add that there. And we've got all of our softwares as well, which is really important to not forget about. So we've got a bunch of example software that we might use here. This is going to give the total of each of these. It's going to put the overall total here, and then it's going to give the daily total just down here. Now, these are all just placeholders. I don't have anything else. I've got Shopify and Omnisend, and I can just go ahead and populate that. I'll do that in my own time. But this would create the daily total of 221. And now I can simply go into here and go 221, and I can just drag that down. And now I can see that. And this is why I don't have all of those costs, because I'd be bleeding money. So you can get rid of that, but you guys can populate your own sheet. Just make sure that this stays up to date. Then we've got AOV, CPA, and ROAS. Now these will all automatically be populated. Average order value is the average amount a customer has spent with you. So this AOV is really big because they bought the 11 socks. Whereas you can see down here, we've got 2 orders. Maybe one was a $20 order, but maybe one was more like a $100 order to bring that AOV around that mark. And then we've got CPA, which is just the cost per acquisition. So the amount that it costs per order to actually acquire the customer. And then ROAS, which is a similar base metric. ROAS can sometimes also be referred to as MER. Then we've got our profit and our net profit percentage. We can see if it's green, it's profitable for the day. Red, it's obviously unprofitable. And then we've got the weekly thing. So we can see that the profit of this brand has gone, we're loss making. I think I talked about that actually. And then slightly less loss making, but similar revenue. Then we had a good week before Christmas. Probably some urgency around that Christmas sale, and it made some profit. So we can actually see that. So what am I actually looking for here? what I would look for, you can see certain periods here. So let's say I'm getting a 2.75 ROAS, 2.6 ROAS after 2 terrible weeks. And I go, okay, maybe this is starting to work. Maybe I found a new creative, or maybe I, created an awesome offer, a landing page. You can see that I'm starting to actually make profit. So why don't we try to spend a little bit more? Which you can see here on the ad spend, it goes from, 79, 60. We do start to spend a little bit more. We increase the budgets to try to increase the amount of money that we make. Now, ironically, it actually didn't work out like that. Once we dropped the budget, it became more efficient, which is just Facebook things. But generally, when you see a certain amount of profit, let's say you're aiming for 20% profit for your business or 30% profit for your business, and you are hitting 50% or something like that, you just want to be spending more. You want to be increasing your budgets on the corresponding ad platforms so that this percentage will drop down, but the increased amount, the actual total profit will increase. Now, if that all just felt way, way too complicated, there is an app that does all of this for you. And I do have an affiliate link for them, and I do highly, highly recommend them for beginners. But there's a free version, and the free version can give you every single thing that we just kind of covered there, which is great. So it's called Triple Wow. So we can just click on the link in this video and you'll get my offer. It should automatically connect to your Shopify and start pulling in sales data. But you also need to make sure that you connect your Facebook ad account and your Google ad account if you're running it, and just anything that you're running ads on. So you can actually directly integrate with that. So I'm just going to do that now. Then you should be brought to a page that looks similar to this. So this is going to match similar metrics over here, but you can see that it's pulling in my ad spend, which should be approximately, around about, so pretty close. And what we can do when we've got this sheet, we can scroll down, we can see our MER, which is really not great. On a daily basis, we can come in here. Let's just say I'm trying to decide whether to increase my budgets today, and I can click apply. What I can do is I can come in here, I can just scroll down, I can look at my net profit, make sure that that's profitable, look at my ROAS both here and then also in my Meta account, go to refer to the Facebook media buying video to understand that a little bit more. And I know that I can raise my budgets here a little bit more. If I can see that this net profit is at 0, I definitely wouldn't be raising my budget. So it's just going to start burning things unless I've got like a promotion or something like that. But yeah, realistically, you just want to make sure that this net profit is kind of cooking, and you're generally targeting maybe 20 to 30% net profit for a drop shipping business. So that's how you use this tool. It's pretty much all done for you. It'll pull in all of those metrics. But the main thing to remember with this is pulling through the cost of the product that I talked about before. So you need to make sure that this section here, this cost per item, is as accurate as possible with everything excluding the media buying costs. Okay, so to get it to the customer. So the cost of the product, the cost of the shipping, as averaged out as best as possible to track it on a daily basis. The good thing about Triple Whale as well, for those people that start to get more progressed, is you can upgrade it. You can start tracking new customer acquisition cost. So you can see for brands that are getting big, maybe you're acquiring lots of returning customers, but that can sometimes be a negative thing because you're not building a new customer base as well. So you can start measuring those metrics. You've also got the pixel as well, which can help with multi-touch attribution and crediting the correct marketing channel. I might do a video on multi-touch attribution, but yeah, realistically, it's a great free tool for those that want to just track daily profit if you don't want to use my manual sheet. So now you've got your daily profit. It's important that we talk about how accurate these reports actually are and why we produce these reports. These reports, as I said, are to adjust your marketing spend and make sure that you don't spend on it too much on a daily basis. These reports are not designed for you to really judge with 100% certainty how your business is performing from a profitability standpoint, because let's take an example. Let's say what you actually paid to ZenDrop was slightly different than your averages, which of course it's going to be. Let's say you forgot to add the OmniSend subscription cost there for a couple of months, And all of these things, when you're reporting to the government how much money that you've created or how much profit you've made or lost, it needs to be completely accurate, because they will do something called an audit, and they will ask you for every single invoice, and they'll go through and check it all. So to do that, we need to have a more accurate form of accounting. The first step that you do, let's say you just started out and you don't really know what you're doing, the main thing that you should just be doing is every single transaction that you have on your bank card or your credit card should be in a Excel spreadsheet. And you could even Google just basic bookkeeping Excel spreadsheet with the link or with the file itself of the invoice. So let's say we subscribe to Shopify. As soon as we subscribe to Shopify, you will get an invoice or a receipt, and then you want to save that into the spreadsheet. Just by doing this, you're going to be light years ahead of most people at the early stage, because when it comes to actually lodging tax, you can then provide all of those transactions to a bookkeeper or an accountant. So the difference between a bookkeeper is generally going to be a lesser tier of financial person, in that they just reconcile this expense is a subscription cost, or this expense is a cost of goods, and they will help you deduct the perfect amount or the legal amount that you can actually do for each of your transactions, because some things can interact differently internationally, some things you can't deduct. You've got sales tax as well. So a bookkeeper is just going to go through for every single one of those transactions and kind of let you know what you can actually deduct. An accountant can obviously do that as well. And some people will get accountants that do their bookkeeping, especially in the early stages. That's completely fine. But the accountant will actually also be accredited in the region that you're lodging in, was probably the region where you pay all of your taxes and you live, or you've incorporated, and then they will do the final lodgement for you. So my main takeaway there is, if you just start tracking all of your transactions and have them all into the spreadsheet at this stage, and you're doing daily profit tracking to make sure you don't spend too much, eventually you're going to have to give that spreadsheet to an accountant or a bookkeeper when you know that you're making enough money and it's going all really, really well. The other option is, in the early stages, let's say you've followed my guide and you're doing $10,000, $20,000 in its first month, and you're like, this is crazy. I would highly recommend that you get one of the tools, either Xero or MYOB, doesn't matter which one. They're both very, very highly used, and linking your bank account straight away to those tools. So it's pulling on all of those transactions, and getting a bookkeeper that is proficient in your local area and understands e-commerce. Too many people, they go onto there's like Upwork and they hire a bookkeeper. It's never worked in, let's say, Australia for me, and they've never done e-commerce either. And they'll just give them that and they won't check any of their work, and it's just an absolute nightmare. Do not do that, right? So if you're getting quite big and you're getting some success, you want to hire someone that really understands, and you can use Upwork or something like that initially, but realistically, you could also just go to your local accountant and get them to sort it out. But I do recommend, highly, highly recommend, someone that has worked on an e-commerce based business, that is experienced with importing from China, dealing with a bunch of different countries as well. So if you can get a referral, that would be a very good way of confirming that. Now, once you have an accountant working with something like Xero or MYOB, they're going to produce what's called a profit and loss statement. And this profit and loss statement is going to be far more accurate than what we've got set up here, because as I said, we might have forgotten that OmniSend charge, or we might have calculated the averages wrong. The profit and loss statement that is produced from those accounting softwares is exact, because it is exactly what has been taken from the bank account itself, because it's linked to your bank account, right? This is us estimating. So you can't just miss all of these transactions. Well, it's as accurate as possible. So this is why really having both of those forms of P&Ls is important, because if you get to the end of your, like, let's say you're in month 3, and this is saying that you're at 30% net profit and you're profitable, but your accountant is saying and producing this more accurate report and saying, hey, you're unprofitable, then chances are you've gone wrong in this setup. where you're setting up the daily tracker and something needs to be adjusted, because otherwise you're going to keep spending. And don't just keep getting reports from these financial people and just being like, oh no, I'm pretty sure I'm making money. My cash balance is going somewhat up. You need to make sure that those things reconcile, because trust me, you'll just keep spending and you'll start losing money. So that is a closer source of truth, those P&Ls. But at the same time, you also do need to manage that finance person. Long story short, there's a few things that you've got to work through as you start to get a little bit more successful. What I'm trying to do is just keep you organized at this point, so that when you engage that account and they're like, wow, how did you even know to do that? And you can say, David told me to. So I think that's a general good start to profitability and tracking that. Alrighty, that is a wrap for this very long tutorial on my main page. We're still going to be posting tutorials on millionaires.com. So go check that out. Go check out the YouTube. Make sure you go to our Discord. We have had so many results. People getting their first sales, people doing $20,000 in sales. Go learn from those people. Learn from the community. I still want to post more tutorials on like how to do multi-product dropshipping, like more traditional rather than branding, TikTok shops, all of those cool things. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.